Hi, and thanks so much for stopping by my YouTube channel. One of the things I've created or I'm working on is called my Cyber Smart Beta program. It's an online Cyber 101 type course that does a couple videos a month for the folks that are participating in it. And I want to show you an example of what that is. I just did the November Module 1, which is Cyber Risk to Businesses. So I'm going to attach it here for you to take a quick look at. If it's something you're interested in, you can go to cybersmart.com and feel free to sign in or log into the program. It costs you nothing. Like I said, since it's a beta program, I'm looking for ways to improve on it, things to do better. The first couple videos were a little rough as I worked out how to use Open Broadcast software to create these videos. I think I've corrected a little audio video sync issue I had. So hopefully I won't have that going forward. But I'm always open for comments, thoughts, ways to do it better. So if you're interested, feel free to take a look at it or feel free to comment simply on this video. Again, it's on Cyber Risk to Business. I hope you find it interesting. Hi friends, welcome to Module 1 for November for the Get Cyber Smart program. I appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos, whether you're watching them all or watching some of them. Any feedback on any of them is valuable to me in how to create and produce modules that are useful to your company, to you as an individual going forward. So at the end of this presentation, like all of them, there will be an email address. Feel free to email me with thoughts, comments, things I can do better, things you want to hear. No one's really sent me anything of information they'd like to hear. And we have obviously 12 months to fill for this. So in December, we're going to talk about business email compromise and ransomware specifically. But when we get to 2022, there's certainly room for you to provide me with information that you'd want to talk about. And so I do have some things planned for that, but if you have something specific you'd like me to talk about, feel free to email me with that. So for this particular module, we are going to be talking about the cyber risk to organizations. So as you think about cyber risk, and really at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do here is reduce our risk, both personally and in our businesses. And I'm going to talk about the second module of this month is going to be how to protect you personally, or protect actually your elder relatives and your kids. So that'll be the next module. But for this module, we're talking about the cyber risk to organizations. What does that mean? Who are the threat actors causing this risk? And then if you look at the framework we talked about last month, you incorporate that framework, you can reduce your risk overall. But this will give you a better understanding about kind of what that risk looks like and why, even if you offload your cybersecurity requirements or responsibilities to third-party vendors, that doesn't always reduce your risk overall. So we're going to talk about that here briefly. Hopefully you like it. So first I want to define what business definition. We're going to define business. What is business? When we talk about businesses, what are we talking about? Folks watching this video come from a wide array of different business types. So essentially there are three types of businesses we're talking about here. There's the private sector businesses, the public sector businesses, and the nonprofit organizations or nonprofit businesses, if you will. And so within each of these areas, I have listed some pretty significant data breaches that show, that regardless of your business area, bad guys you have something that the bad cyber actors want, be it personal identifiable information, be it healthcare information if you're a hospital or healthcare facility, be it financial information. Churches obviously are big targets simply because, from the tithe perspective, you take in money and bad guys want to figure out how to get that money from you. And private sector, pretty straightforward. Personal information of customers, of employees, financial information, all that stuff. And then the public sector, obviously governments are going to steal from government. So government actors targeting government entities. And we'll talk more about that. The last slide here is going to kind of give a hierarchy of cyber actor threats. And I'll have that particular slide available in the document section of the program. So feel free to take a look for that there. But, so I want to talk about, the entities I have listed here: Marriott, Target, Yahoo, Equifax, so on, OPM. Those were all incidents of those companies being hit by some kind of cyber attack. Obviously, Marriott, they got a lot of personal information on Marriott users. Target was all the credit cards that folks use for Target. OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, was the targeting of information about anybody who ever worked for or currently worked for the government. And then the St. Mary's Baptist Church was hit with ransomware. NRA was recently hit with ransomware. So it doesn't matter what business sector you belong to. Cyber actors are looking to get to you or your company's information because there's something of value there that they have. Here are some headlines just to show the depth and breadth of this problem. So SolarWinds attack affected companies an average $12 million. SolarWinds was a big data breach that made the news several months ago or earlier this year. And it was a bad password on a server that SolarWinds used to send their product to their customers. So SolarWinds is an IT scanning software, at least one of the things that they do to try to make you understand what your assets are within your network. And the bad guys got into a server that was used to provide the SolarWinds software updates to the clients or to their customers. And so thousands of customers got malware pushed into their system because they were relying on SolarWinds for a certain part of their cybersecurity management system. So I say all this just to make the point that if you offload your cybersecurity to a third-party vendor or a managed service provider, most of them are very good at what they do, but there's still a risk there, because if that company doesn't do a good job understanding their risk, then they're not going to protect your data very well. After the SolarWinds hackers did SolarWinds, they took what they learned from what they did and they compromised or worked to compromise Microsoft. The Colonial Pipeline breach actually was a ransomware attack from earlier this year that caused gas prices to spike and the gas supply to have a problem on the East Coast and the Southeast of the United States, was again because of a bad password, which allowed bad guys into the Colonial Pipeline's financial network of their company and launch a ransomware attack. Out of abundance of caution, Colonial Pipeline kind of shut everything down so that the problem wouldn't expand out, which caused the gas shortage problem. And this goes to show how a single attack on an infrastructure-related private company can have a great impact on everybody domestically, simply because, if they take down the power grid or they take down a pipeline, you're not going to get your gas. Certainly a problem. And it just goes again to show that there's a depth and breadth to the target that these cyber actors are looking to get into. JPS is a meat packing company. They got hit with ransomware. They had to close their plants until they paid $11 million to get their data back, and that caused meat prices to spike. Osceola Public Schools in Florida, the 6th largest school district in the United States, hit with ransomware. And obviously schools are a huge target now because a lot of them are going to this hybrid model where kids with COVID or who come in contact with COVID or parents don't want them to go sit in a classroom, have a online option. So this is happening all over the country. So obviously schools then become a huge target, because if the schools can't get the information they need to their students or to their faculty members, it causes a problem. So bad guys recognize that, and you see schools being much more heavily targeted. Now schools are part of the public sector business group. There's a rise in numbers of defense contractors being hacked. Not a surprise. The defense contracting entity is very interesting because most of them, if not all of them, are private sector businesses, but what they do supports the public sector as well. Obviously, the government contracts out to defense contractors to do a host of different services, be it to build, missiles and to build guns and stuff like that, but also to do IT management in certain areas. So you have that rising up to understanding that if I can get into a private company through a defense contractor, I might be able, if I'm a bad guy, to pivot into a public sector entity. So I just make that point that, again, there is a blending here of private and public sector, and to a small part, some nonprofits too, that if they get into one, they can kind of get into all. Business email compromise continues to be a problem in 2021, and this is for everybody. It doesn't matter what business sector you're in. Business email compromise can be devastating to private sector companies, public sector companies, and nonprofit organizations, because with a business email compromise, someone sends you an email that looks legitimate saying you need to pay a bill, pay an invoice. You end up sending out whatever that amount is, and it goes to an address that it's not supposed to. You lose all your money. So certainly a problem. We're going to talk about that specifically in a future module, what it is, what it looks like, and how to mitigate against it. Kaseya was another third-party vendor that was impacted with a ransomware attack, and because they were infiltrated, the bad guys were able to launch from Kaseya to the clients of Kaseya and cause ransomware attacks there as well. And then cyber criminals steal, cough right there. steal 1.75 million from an Ohio church. So just making the point there, obviously, that, churches are huge targets. They have money with the move to online services, to online tithing. Bad guys recognize that there is a vulnerability there, an area they can jump into. So this is the chart I was talking about that I'm going to put specifically into the course document area so you can look at it closer. But it shows a tiered hierarchy of cyber bad actors. And these are the threats that cause the risk to you as a business, or to the business that you work for or are associated with. And it goes all the way from your tier 1 attackers, your script kiddies, non-malicious actors, all the way up to nation state actors. And the point of this pyramid is to show that depending on what kind of organization you are, you may not have to worry about all of these. Now, for example, do churches need to worry about the top tier there, the nation state group, targeting them? Most cases, no. Because if you look to the side here, the actors are professional spies, governments, things like that. They target technology, critical systems, people with knowledge, and so on. Their impact is severe, catastrophic losses, and a national security impact. Do churches and nonprofits need to worry about this? Generally not. Nonprofits, financial organizations, to a small or smaller rationale, healthcare, should really worry about 4 down, 1 to 4, because these are going to be your criminal organizations, your hacktivists, your groups that are going to target pretty much everyone to steal information. These are mostly cyber criminals, cyber hacktivists, your those two threats we talked about previously down at the far end of the scale. But if you are a public sector, if you're a government entity, if you're a cleared defense contractor, if you create a lot of intellectual property, Microsoft, for example, as well, Apple, then the tier 5 and tier 6 actors cause you a lot more risk because they are targeting you constantly, trying to get into your systems because there's a lot of intellectual property, a lot of personal identifiable information there that they want access to. So what this particular chart shows is not only who the actor is, who they're targeting, and what their goal and impact is, but on the other side, it shows how do you defend against it in the green. So, from tier 1, if you have firewall and antivirus, that pretty much takes care of your script kiddies for the most part. Tier 4, you need some hardened engines, some hardened infrastructure, some other stuff. You'd actually need a cybersecurity team if you're if you're worried about tier 4 or above. And if you're worried about tier 5 or tier 6, you need a whole set of stuff. You need counterintelligence capabilities, risk and vulnerability reduction, offensive capabilities, things like that. Most of the folks probably listening to this module are not going to have to worry about tier 5 and tier 6 in general, but tier 4 and down are all actors that can cause risk to your organization because, again, you have something that they want and they will find ways to get into that. And this chart does a nice job of kind of showing you, what their goal is, kind of how they're doing it to a certain extent. And as always, with all of this stuff, I'm not the end-all, be-all, one-stop shop for all information. Do some due diligence on your own. Expand out your resources. I'll put some other stuff in the document area of the CyberSmart program so you can look at that and give you some additional resources to look at. IC3 is always a good place to go to look at to see what the new threats are that are out there, because threats are constantly changing. Because I've said this before, if you've seen me talk in any presentations before, technology moves very quickly like this. The bad guys are right behind that, figuring out how to compromise that technology. Law enforcement is way back here, and then your government actors who would create laws to stop it are way behind. So with that, it's incumbent on you to understand the threats targeting you so you can assess your risk and proceed wisely online. So that is really a quick look at the cyber risk to business. This is really the slide of importance. These are the cyber actors that are causing your risk. So if you can, again, understand who's targeting you, you can understand what they would be targeting. Find your crown jewels. I'll say this many times. Identify your crown jewels. What's the important thing you need to protect? And make sure you have a lot of resources going to protect that data, however that looks. As always, questions or feedback, thoughts or comments, hit me up, Darren at cybersmart.com, and we will see you in the next module. Thanks.